I have a theory here. People always ask, people like Alex Jones or Milo Yiannopoulos or Laura Loomer, like, why did they get taken out? Why did Gavin McInnes get taken out? And my theory is this, I'm not calling them fringe, okay? And some of these people are my friends, and so I'm not speaking poorly of them. I'm just using the left's, using them as an example here. They go, okay, these are the fringe guys on the right, and the left says that. So if we can take these fringe guys out that we think are extreme in our matter, once you take out the entire perimeter of the left's idea of extreme, it now makes the perimeter of what's far right much more mainstream right. And that being said, is where people like myself then get called far right or extreme right, when I'm like, hey, I'm actually, you should know, and this is a common rhetoric. It's like, actually the far right really actually hates me. They're some of the biggest spammers, and they're, stupid alt accounts and their avatars. They're not even brave enough to have their own profile picture, and yet they're going to save the whole country from immigrants or whatever. But I'm going to say they hate me. But what's weird is that as we've seen the perimeter keep getting taken off of the right, so that now just the small sliver of the mainstream is now considered the furthest right.
Right.
We haven't seen that on the left. And what's even weird is we've actually seen the glorification, the financing of the perimeter, to where the perimeter on the left keeps going further and further out. So what used to be far left, actually just 3-4 years ago, is actually pretty moderate. And now you have people talking about the fact that, I mean, realistically speaking, they're saying that, the army and the military is racist because anytime a white man has, command over a black man, that's systemic racism. And you're going, holy hell, do you not understand how the military even works? These are voluntary recruits. These people, if you know anything about the military people, they don't care about your sexual orientation, race, creed, color. They're all about camaraderie and brotherhood, etc. And so, like, what I've seen is this weird intellectual warfare where now the establishment or the real mainstream right, we're all like essentially right-wing terrorists according to the establishment media, and the left has this free pass to write articles that at some point I don't even know if they're serious.
Well, so this is where it gets funny. Alex Jones used to talk about something, I could be getting this wrong, problem, reaction, solution. It was something I used to see on the internet way back in the day. The idea being that, look, these Illuminati types, they're going to create a problem. And then once the people react, they come in and they're the solution. I used to remember seeing that stuff on the internet and the libertarian web and the conspiracy stuff. The idea being the government sparks the issue, and then only they can solve it, vote for them. They're literally posting that right now, the left, about Trump. The left, Rachel Maddow, for instance. I mean, think about it. There's a video from a group called Juice Media. It's Rap News, and I think this one is number 6. And it's about Julian Assange and Cablegate back in 2010 when they made this. In their parody, they satire Alex Jones saying, we've got to stop the rise of the commie Nazi fascists. It's like one of the jokes in the video, and he talks about Hillary Clinton being evil. Quite literally, he says, "Hill dog, your lies are blatant." And he says, the Nazi fascists are taking over. That was Alex Jones. That's how people viewed him in 2010. Now, those same people who think that the fascists are coming, they like Hillary Clinton or whatever. They're screaming that Donald Trump is creating the riots across the country so that you must vote for him. They're literally pushing the old school internet conspiracy line about the government creating problems so only they can solve it. The whole thing is it's weird.
What strikes me the weirdest is the fact that we constantly get accused of being exactly what the people are that are accusing us. And I mean this very thoroughly speaking. What people don't notice, I run a show called Slightly Offensive. You can find it on YouTube. It's just called Slightly Offensive. And I focus a lot on getting my own proprietary content. I think that a lot of people don't do that anymore. And I don't mind, but I like to go out. It's something I enjoy doing. It's a crazy world that people in media still do what they enjoy. But I go out and I capture a lot of my own footage at riots, at protests, at things, and I commentate on them. And I have 2 separate parts. On Twitter, I'm myself, Elijah Schaffer. I try to stay unbiased. I try to just give video reports for other news outlets, etc. I license my footage. But on my own show, we're going to let the S word hit the fan.
Gloves
we're,
off.
Yeah,
Gloves
we're
are
gonna
off.
we're gonna
Family
go we're
friendly.
gonna go for it. But now it's very kosher. It's very kosher. I always say that it's about a 14 plus audience. If you're 14 and older, you can watch it. That being said, when I look at this, I can be using my own footage that I captured, meaning I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not ripping footage. I'm not manipulating it even. You can't even say that I'm a propagandist. This is my footage that I was there, that I risked my life to get. And in many ways, I have risked my life to get this footage. I'm pretty proud of that, meaning there are moments where I thought, I'm going to die. And it wasn't so I can get clicks. I'm going, but if America doesn't see this, if I don't run towards this, they're not going to see the truth. And in my mind, I'm not, it's not, no one's like, oh, it's not like a grift. Like if I get this, I get 1 million views. Cause I have a wife, I have a family. My mom just died a couple months ago. I can't let somebody else die in my family. My family's broken over this. And so when I'm in these situations, in these race riots, dealing with my own tragic death in my own family, I've been married a couple years, taking care of my wife, and I see something happening and I'm going, I've got to run to that. I am definitely thinking just this needs to come out to America. And then I put that footage, oftentimes censored, to meet YouTube or big tech guidelines. I keep my commentary kosher. Anything that isn't, censors bleep it out. We bleep it out so that it's just like normal broadcast television. And then my video gets age restricted, it gets taken down, my account gets throttled, they tell me I'm borderline, etc. And I'm going, wait a second. My opinions aren't even partisan. When I'm there and I look at the stuff that happened in Kenosha, the altercation between the young man and those other individuals, when I'm there and I filmed it and I witnessed it and the other angles are my friends and we scoured over this footage and we looked at it and we came to a conclusion, that's actually journalism. That's not just commentating. That's not just editorial. If I have 4 or 5 angles and individuals and we discussed and we talked and we come to a logical conclusion off of what we saw and where we were, why are we conspiracy theorists? Why are we the ones that get discredited? But yet journalists like the New York Times and Washington Post, the night of those events, which I'm going to be careful the way I word it because I know these algorithms, the way they try to pick up these words to just throw these streams off. When I was there and I watched that Twitter curates at the top of the feed, here's what happened. And it's from articles who had not yet contacted the journalists who were there, who did not quote us, who, from what I saw, were not on the ground in that moment. It makes you wonder, are we really the extreme people? Are we the conspiracy theorists?
Hold on.
No.
We talked about this the other day. Radicalization. What does that mean, right? People have become radical, right? Brian Stelter recently was on C-SPAN and someone called in saying that CNN was the enemy of truth. They've lied hundreds of thousands of times. And then he says, well, this year there's been a lot of radicalization against the media. Okay. Is it radical to want borders for your country?
No.
Of course not. It's the way it's always been. Is it radical to want a strong military?
No, absolutely not.
It's literally the way it's always been. Is it radical to want to lower unemployment and make sure that the people of your country have jobs before immigrants?
Sounds good to me.
That's actually the way it's always been. It was only 10 years ago the Democrats were for all of these things as well. In fact, Bernie Sanders was for this only a few years ago. They've gone so far off the rails that they're so far left now, they're looking at regular people screaming radical. Quite literally like Brian Stelter. And that's mainstream news. So there's good news here. I want to talk to you about the riots too, because that was actually really interesting what you were saying about what's going on. Because I like ragging on the media. So when I look at the far left and how far they've gone, I don't think they make up the majority of people. This fringe group.
I've heard it's 8%. I've heard it's 8% of the left.
The Hidden Tribes report says 8%. It may be a little bit bigger because that was a couple years ago. So I'm wondering if you've got, I'll do it this way. You've got mainstream society, and the left starts pulling further and further left. And it's possible that we get dragged or it breaks off. If the far left moves so far left that regular people become confused by what they're doing, they become fringe weirdos. And all of these big mainstream companies and the NBA, for instance, their ratings are in the gutter, 40% down. Do you see this?
You know what? I have, and unfortunately for them, I've never watched them because it is a grift. I mean, these guys they've always complained. They're always getting hyper political, making millions of dollars talking about.
Not all of them.
Well, but okay, yes, not all of them. But I've seen that. I'm kind of anti-elitist. Like I don't like. It's not that I'm against sports, and I love all American pastimes, etc. I'm glad people have pastimes. I just don't like it when wealthy people who live very comfy lifestyles lecture America. I've never been comfortable with that.
For sure, they're not working class. But the what I'm seeing with this idea of getting woke, going broke, it's not a universal law. There have been movies that have been woke that have done really, really well, but they're not authoritarian woke for the most part, right? The example I like to give is Into the Spider-Verse, where they have Miles Morales, Afro-Latino Spider-Man, and they don't make race the point of the story like these woke, crappy movies do that end up bombing. So I think this intersectionalism, this weird cult-like behavior is isolating. It's making regular people say, I don't want to be a part of this when they're forced into it. And I think it's possible. A lot of weak-willed people may just be like, whatever you say, and buy into it. But I think America is built upon generations of defiant individuals. I think about it this way. Our culture is very individualist for a very simple reason. The people who left the European, countries to come here were, I would rather land a boat on an empty shoreline and just start foraging for food than deal with you. And we're the descendants, not all of us, because part of my family didn't come here until actually, I think all my family didn't come here until the early 1900s or the late 1890s. But America has been culturally built off of those ideas, and they don't just go away. So we are very staunch individualists. I imagine most people are going to say, leave me alone or else. So when you start getting the things you're talking about, where they're like, tell the world you're racist, eventually people are going to say, I'd rather go live in the woods and build a farm than deal with you and your weirdo.
And they are.
I know.
And they are. People are leaving the cities in droves. I am from Los Angeles. If people cannot tell from my slightly mixed voice that sounds slightly lispy, slightly homosexual, and also Valley Girl together, that's what's called growing up in Los Angeles and hanging around a lot of liberals but thinking for yourself.
Where's the surfer dude in there?
The surfer dude was the pot I smoked for like a decade. I mean that's where I sit there and I get confused sometimes. It's just a lot of pot in just a few years. But I will say this. Being there, California people have their own way of speaking. I'm very much a California person in a lot of ways. And I always found it really funny because there's this group of individuals who got really mad at me for, do you know who Jesse Lee Peterson is?
Yeah, of course.
Amazing. How he goes, gay. I just think the guy's so funny. He really is a funny guy. And he, I was on his show and he's like, he always asks questions in this dichotomy. Like it's for entertainment purposes. Like, do you love your wife or do you hate your wife or something? And you're like, oh, that's a weird question, but like, he goes, are you like a conservative or are you a Republican conservative? And I was
Which
like,
one?
Like, it's not even the, hey, what's your political standing? I said, I'm a California conservative, which to people who live in California knows what that means. It means I hold conservative values, but I also live around really interesting individuals, and I'm the minority. And I've learned how to work, operate, eat, drink, and be friends with people who think vehemently different than what I think about the world. And I'm okay with that. It means nothing. It's not a complicated saying. It's just like California conservatives always say that.
Yeah, respect that. That's cool.
Yeah, I know, but this group of people got like super, super mad that I said this. But I think that there's this whole part of America that is being ignored, where whether you would call it like a respectable Democrat or a California conservative, there's this whole civil group, like the main swath of America, that is somehow being dejected from the conversation, like you said, about people being called extreme. I've never been considered an extreme person. I never in my life have considered my politics to be extreme. I run into, you probably run into extreme people online too. They're there and they exist and they have the right to exist. I'm against censorship. I think people have the right to be extreme as long as they're nonviolent. I think they have the right to have radical ideas. I think that it's great.
Even communists.
Yes, yeah. I do.
Especially communists.
But I also think too that like this idea of the extreme people kind of taking the narrative and batting it against each other, where I know the far right and it's like 200 people. Like that exists, and like
seriously.
And like 6 prominent ones, by the way. This is like 200 main accounts that I know of that are far right. And so it's really weird that when the left even says, "Oh, you're far right," I'm like, "No, I know the far right." That's like, I can literally tell you what accounts. I wouldn't do it, but I could show you what accounts are far right. There's only a few of them. But because they have scapegoated us as that, I just have to be careful on the right that we're not forgetting that there's this whole swath of people that are feeling very much alienated and homeless from what they knew to be the Democratic Party. And that's why I don't want to call it Republican. I don't want to call it conservatism, because a lot of these people aren't conservative. But
They think they are now, though.
But the right wing, but see, that's why we have to be careful not calling them conservatives. They're not conservative. They're liberal.
I know.
But the right wing now includes, this is the weirdest thing, and this is where I'm going to get so much
flack.
Yeah, flack for this from those weird anonymous accounts probably. But I'm okay to say this, is that the right wing has become so umbrella inclusive that it is now includes conservatives and liberals, even if people don't like that, because it's become the common sense party essentially.
I sat down with Glenn Beck and we disagreed on pro-life versus pro-choice. At the end, we shook hands and said, "Hey, it was great.
Great
Glad
chat.
to have me." And we disagree, and I don't like it was the exasperation was kind of funny because I was like, I really think the best way to put it is we have a different, like, there's an ethical barrier between us. But we recognize we should sit down and just keep talking to, like, figure out each other's worldviews.
Yeah, but why mock the moderates? And I think that's what I come down to is that I want to acknowledge that there's extremists on the left and the right. It's just that the right wing extremists are still fringe. And that's the key thing, is they try to make it seem like those people that are right-wing establishment are fringe and extreme. It's like, no, there are some right-wing extremists. What I'm upset about is not the fact that you guys want to call out extreme right-wing people. I'm mad that while calling out right-wing extreme people and talking about the negativity of who they are, you then put on a pedestal left-wing extremists. Like, if you're going to fight against extremism, you've got to be consistent, because that's what frustrates, I think, that the average individual, and why more people are defecting towards, I wouldn't even call them Republicans or right wing, but they're becoming Trump supporters or America First. They're getting behind the America First mentality.
You're looking at one.
Yeah, exactly. Is that you're just going, I literally can tell you this. I don't agree with everything on the right. I may not be as the most conservative guy that lives maybe in, some southern state or whatever. But I can tell you that whatever this insane militant communist faction is that has hijacked what they're calling the Democrat Party and is quickly seemingly becoming the establishment Democrat Party is just detrimental. It's toxic for the future of our country, and I don't want any part in it.
Alec, you could not possibly have a more... So I'll put it this way. Let me start over. If you took the Democrats and you looked at where they were in the last election, and then you take someone like AOC or any member of the squad, and you actually map their personal policy positions they've espoused and their calls for unrest, like Ayanna Pressley, they are so far left, you can't even call it radicalization. It's something it's extremism. It's like if AOC really is the new face of the party, which a lot of people have said, maybe she isn't, but she's got 8.5 whatever million followers.
It's crazy.
You go from a Joe Biden saying, Barack Obama's administration, they called Obama the deporter in chief because he deported so many people. Now you've got Biden saying moratorium on deportations, decriminalizing border crossings. I think Biden may have said that. I could be wrong about that, but he's talking about a moratorium on deportations, and I'm like, that's a 180 from Obama. They've convinced Biden to adopt radicalized positions, so it's a fact. And Joe Biden comes out recently and says, "Do I look like a radical socialist?" And I'm like, "No, you look like a bumbling old man." But you've come out in the debates with these insane fringe positions that nobody wants, except for a tiny fraction of screaming people. And that's what's coming into mainstream politics.
But that's what strikes me as interesting, because what I realize is this, and this is where I think I know why this has happened. Okay, because what happens is that people lose touch with reality. And I know this because when I watch influencers, right, and I watch people, I will see, and I talked to Ezra Levant at Rebel about this, about how a lot of influencers on the right get pulled towards extremism. Because this is I'm going to make a point about the left here. What the extreme fringe right does is they essentially try to make you seem like, hey, we're the real right. We're the real cool people. We're the Puritans. We know what's really going on. Without us, the country is effed. And everybody else is a sellout and a fake. And here's the thing. We might have some weird ideas about certain races and people, but just listen to this. Everybody else is selling out the country. And if you really want to save it, you got to come closer and closer to our ideology. And then you share a couple ideas that might agree with what they agree with, because you take any random sample of people, anybody might agree with something you say. And then they start getting mad that you don't agree with everything they agree with, because clearly some of their ideas are extremely toxic. And then they demonize you. So what happens is someone could have 200,000 followers on Twitter, but then they have 2,000 of these like random accounts, multiple are run by the same person, flood their inbox, go on there. if you're a small-minded person who's out of touch with reality, you think, oh my gosh, everybody wants me to go towards these extreme ideas. My base. It's like,
right,
no.
They're bombing you.
You have 200,000 followers. These are 2,000 people who you can look don't even follow you. It's not even 1%, even if they did follow, if you're following. This is not who you should be listening to. This is mob mentality. These are extremists who are trying to push you into this cultic idea that what you're doing is somehow ruining the country unless you follow them. Now, I know that. You know that. You people who work on the right that are smart know that, or left, that extremists aren't the status quo. But if you are easily manipulated, like Joe, somebody who's bumbling, mentally incapacitated in some ways, these people are dangerous in the fact, not about violently, intellectually, they will take advantage of
This
you.
is literally what's happened. The Democratic Party uses Twitter as their public opinion barometer. So all of the fringe extremists on Twitter who will bombard one of these journalists or these politicians with crazy opinions, they think people must want this.
Exactly.
And regular people aren't on Twitter. It's like 22% of the country is active on. No, I think it's less than that. I think. I forgot what the number is.
Do you want to know what? Do you
like
want to? Let me put
a
a better number on that. I went on Social Blade, just to see if I grew a little bit or whatever. It's this website. This is not impressive. I'm not boasting about this, but it said I'm like number 40,000 or whatever on Twitter. And I'm not even very big. So if you just took that swath of like 50,000 people that are like in the hundreds of thousands and verified to millions, that's 50,000 people out of a population of what, 350, 370?
328 or something.
Yeah, okay. So over 300 million people, you're talking about like 50,000 people deciding the discourse of the whole country.
Right, yeah.
Maybe take out half of those of people who probably don't engage politics online.
Yeah,
so like 25,000 people are literally creating the entire narrative for what's the whole country. And I mean, not that I'm that influential or anything. I'm just pointing out the fact that like 25,000 people out of 300 million plus sort of dictating what the news is, what goes on shows, etc. That's less than 2%.
And when Donald Trump then invokes law and order and regular life, regular people, just like normalcy, that's what they're trying to do with Biden. That was one of the arguments, that Joe Biden invokes this idea of normalcy. It's like, remember the Obama years when life was regular? Vote for Biden and it might work. And they say Donald Trump's the cause of all of this. It's not true. But Donald Trump says law and order, so you're getting that split.
Yeah, when you got fined for not getting medical insurance, like that was normal.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.